right, we're reading. Sorry it's so late, but again, had a busy day. It's dealing with housing in New York City is a labyrinth, and most people in the city are working people, and we're struggling to just try to maintain some stability. Um, so running around all day. We're reading from Black Reconstruction, W.B. Du Bois, 1860 to 1880, and in America. So let's read that properly. Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880 by W.B. Du Bois. I don't know why I'm so slack. Feel groggy. A report from South Carolina tells of 97 Negroes killed and 146 shot and whipped. There are riots because of the arming of Negroes. White farmers who are displaced as tenants attack the Negro tenants. Negro churches are burned. In one community, 4/5 of the Negro men are sleeping out in the woods. Gins and gin houses are burned in retaliation by Negroes. Colored women are whipped and raped by whites. In some cases, the white landholders try to protect Negroes, while the irresponsible poor whites lead the attack. In another community, 11 murders and more than 600 whippings have gone unnoticed. While there are 7 cases of incendiary burnings, Negro artisans are stopped from following their trade, and the antagonism between poor whites and Negroes grows. 6 Negroes foundrymen are beaten and blacksmiths whipped. In Edgefield in Lawrence County, South Carolina, there were organized bands of regulators, armed men who make it their business to traverse these counties and maltreat Negroes without any instances, in the most horrible and atrocious manner, even to maiming them, cutting their ears off, etc. In one case, 2 citizens of one of these counties testified against these parties and were instantly compelled to leave the county, barely escaping with their lives. The citizens are bound in honor by an understanding or compact among them, not to testify against these regulators, so that it is impossible to get evidence against them unless the Negro gives it. Here you see the terror. And if you go down south today, it's that same terror. It's that same fear. The younger people are trying to come out of it a little bit, but these people that were terrorized here raised their children to be afraid. And remember, terror in the South, this kind of terror here lasted up until, actually it still goes on today, but lasted on a regular basis until what, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. So, if you're watching this, you either were around then, or were raised by somebody that went through this, or raised by somebody who was raised by somebody who went through this. So maybe a grandmother, a grandparent who raised a parent to be like this, to be so afraid. And it stunts you. It stops you from even trying certain things. Just don't go there. Don't go there. These are the things that are allowed for us, and this is where we stick. The problem is, it's never enough if you stay closed for the whole community to make it. So you have a permanent destabilized community because no one will push. And I think now even the ruling class needs us to push, but we're too afraid to push. It's rough, man. I just laugh when I look at it like, man, but that's why I try to teach, but you know. The report of Ku Klux investigation published in 1871 said of South Carolina that in 9 counties covered by the investigation for a period of approximately 6 months, the Ku Klux Klan lynched and murdered 35 men whipped 262 men and women, otherwise outraged, shot, mutilated, burned out, etc., 101 persons. It committed 2 cases of sex offenses against Negro women. During this time, the Negroes killed 4 men, beat 1 man, committed 16 other outrages, but no case of torture. No cases found of a white woman seduced or raped by a Negro. The reason given for Ku Klux outrages were significantly varied. The victims should suffer in revenge for killing and for some cases of arson. They were Republicans, they were radical, they had attempted to hold elections, they were carrying arms, they were niggers, they were damn niggers, they boasted that they would own land. They should be made a recant Republican principles, or made to recant Republican principles, and they should give desired information. Remember, back then, the Republicans were abolitionists. I don't really know where all these abolitionists went, because even, in 1964, when LBJ signed legislations for blacks, most of those people who was Democrats even this time, well, maybe the Democrats, they weren't Democrats. No, they were Democrats at this time, I believe. They switched and left the Democratic Party. Republicans were basically what we call now country club Republicans. So black people came to the Democratic Party and liberal whites came to the Democratic Party. And Southern Democrats just went into the Republican Party and took it over. So that's why you have the Republican Party now is really the Democratic Party then. But the Democratic Party is still not filled with abolitionists. So I don't know where all the abolitionists went. I'm gonna try to find that out. Do some research, and that be one of my readings. That'd be one of my readings. In Georgia in 1868, disturbances are reported in the Northwest section, where poor whites are in the majority. Negroes were whipped for debt for associating with white women and for trying to vote in the Cotton Belt, where the Negroes outnumbered the whites. 3 white members of the legislature were killed, and there were insurrections and riots, culminating in one at Camilla. In this case, 300 Republicans, mostly Negroes, with music and banner, were marching to hold a public meeting. They were met by the sheriff and told that they could not meet. A riot ensued. There were 8 or 9 Negroes were killed, and 20 for 40 wounded. No whites were killed. The Negro Secretary of State, Jonathan Gibbs, in Florida, when called before a committee of Congress in 1871, reported 153 murders in Jackson County in that state. Conditions in Texas were particularly bad. In 1869, in 30 counties, there was no civil government, and in others, very imperfect organizations. During Sheridan's command of the state, there were 9 murders a month. If you own both hell and Texas, Sheridan said upon one occasion, he would rent out Texas and live in hell. A statement which was repeated over the country for a generation. Benjamin F. Wade added to this that he was told by a native, all that Texas needs to make it a paradise is water and good society. Yes, answered Wade, that's all they need in hell. Ice water in hell, yeah. A committee of the Constitutional Convention in 1868 on partial return said that 1,035 men have been murdered in Texas since the close of the war. And a federal attorney said that the number might have been 2,000. The Secretary of State reports that Texas Senate that 905 homicides had taken place in 2 years, ending in 1870. And he believed that if all the facts were known, the total would be 1,500. In 1870, after the new state government was organized, it was officially reported that 2,970 persons charged with murder were evading arrest in the state. and 2 to 7 murders were often attributed to the same individual. From war, turmoil, poverty, forced labor, and economic rivalry of labor groups, there came again in the South the domination of the secret order, which systemized the effort to subordinate the Negro. The method of force, which hides itself in secrecy, is a method as old as humanity. The kind of things that men are afraid or ashamed to do openly, and by day they accomplish secretly, masked at night. The method has certain advantages. It uses fear to cast out fear. It dares things at which open it does thing no it dares things at which open method hesitates. It may with a certain impunity attack the high and the low. It need hesitate at no outrage of maiming or murder. It shields itself in mob mind, then throws over all a veil of darkness, which becomes glamour. It attracts people who otherwise could be reached. It harnesses the mob. Sometimes I wonder, you see those postcards of people at lynchings, and you see those pictures of people at lynchings showing their faces and smiling and dressed up. You see black bodies hanging. I wonder if people, if their descendants are around. Well, obviously they're around. I wonder if they ever recognize anybody in those pictures. I wonder if the grandparents and great grandchildren and great grandchildren know that they're in those pictures. It'd be interesting to get those pictures and try to trace them back to say, hey man, this is your great grandfather. This is your grandfather. How do you feel about that? To ask those people that. It's amazing. And by the way, nothing ever ended, right? I don't think as many people are being lynched in the old way as they were then. But when you start adding traditional lynchings, and then you start adding shootings, stabbings, basically more shootings now. The cops and the Klan, which sometimes are the same thing. The overseers, as we call them, are often shooting us to death. Unarmed men, unarmed women, and sometimes unarmed children. So, hangings are just too much trouble, and I guess not clean enough. So it's shootings. And with body cams, it's harder to plant guns on us, so it's just shootings and pretending they was reaching for a phone. Because smartphones are the easiest thing to just pretend that they have. And it happens, and then it happens. Or they try to make you so afraid that you run, and when you run, they got you. And by the way, when they stop you, I'm 50-something years old, they're still stopping me. You do feel like running. When they stopped me, I just felt like they were going to shoot me. Because I was surrounded one day in the train station. I've told this story before. And I just said, wow, they're just going to kill me. So this is the end of this. And at that time, I was still married. And I figured my wife would be able to use that to sue them and get paid. Because that would have been a real big case. Real big case. I don't have any record. And she could have used my videos to show what kind of person I actually am. So that would have been proof. It's one of those things, one of those sad realities where I would have been worth more dead than alive. But obviously, They ran my ID, saw that I had nothing, ran it again, saw that it was nothing, got confused, and eventually let me go. And it was the same old thing. Black cop, Spanish cop. Black cop took point to harass me. The old white cop, his master, stood off about 15 feet away with his hands on his gun. You see. So now they got Negroes to do their dirty work. Because if I would have moved, he would have shot both of us. The white cop would have shot both of us. He didn't care. So that's what we're dealing with today. And I think this was in this was before COVID. I think 2019. Might have been 2019, maybe 2019. It's when this happened. I want to say. Or was it after 2020? No, I think it was before 20. I think it was 2019. So, that's 5 years ago. So, and it was kind of in the fall, so it wasn't really even 5 years ago. So that's what we're still dealing with. If you want to support the podcast or anything else, you click the links, you give directly, or you go to patreon.com/Connerson Center, etsy.com/shop/Connerson Center, and get all the materials there. Until next time, take care and be safe.